Okay, so today on Delicious and Nutritious, we're traveling over to Korea today. We're hopping on the bullet train and we're pulling into Fermentation Station and we're picking up the star of the show today, kimchi, one of my absolute favorite ingredients. And with it, we're gonna make a recipe that hits all of the core tenets of this show. Super easy to make, simple, it has good nutritional value, and it tastes absolutely delicious. So if you're ready, let's get right into it. All right, so today we're taking the star of the show, which I said is kimchi, and we're making a kimchijeon or a kimchi pancake, which is a savory appetizer coming from Korean cuisine. It's one of my favorites. It's an absolute crowd pleaser. I've brought 2 or 3 different people to Korean restaurants for them to try out Korean cuisine, and this is a dish that I always order as one of my appetizers, and they absolutely love it every time. So I said, you know what, I gotta try to make this myself, and it's really easy to make, and it's super simple to get all the ingredients as well. You can pick up everything here on the table at Walmart except for this Korean pancake mix, but you don't need this to make this. You could totally use all-purpose flour as well. Just use the same amount of all-purpose flour as I'm gonna tell you to use of the Korean pancake mix. This is like the bougie option. You know, I was at the Korean Mart, or I was at the Asian Mart last week, and I said, I gotta grab some of this. I was picking up some other things. I saw this, I picked it up to kind of make this recipe as well. So you definitely don't need to go out to an Asian market to pick this up, but if you do, again, Asiana Market in East Providence, Good Fortune in Providence as well, and there's a few more up in the Worcester area, H Mart up in Burlington, but you can get this stuff. But again, you don't need to go to an Asian supermarket to get kimchi. You can get this out. This is the one that they have at Walmart down the street here in North Attleboro and at Walmarts across the state. So really easy to get kimchi. It's in the, there's usually a section in the produce where there's like tofu, and like pre-sliced onions and stuff. It's usually in that section, kind of around the mushrooms. You might have to look for it a little bit, but you can totally get this at Walmart. And again, you can use all-purpose flour. This is shrimp that I got from Walmart. And then these are sliced Oriental yams that I actually got from Market Basket. You don't need to add these. The only key ingredients that you need for this are the kimchi, the batter, and the water. That will make you a simple kimchi pancake. We're gonna add some shrimp today for some extra protein, of course, and then we're gonna add some of these sweet potatoes as well for a little bit of flavor, a little bit of crunch, and some extra carbohydrates as well. Also gonna add some green onion for some aromatic and a little bit of extra flavor and texture in there as well. But I mean, we're looking at maybe 6 ingredients total, and we'll get into actually making the recipe, and it's so easy you won't believe it. So the first thing, as usual, I like to go over to the cut station here, over to Cut Cam. I have a nicer knife today than I did last time, if you remember from the gyudon episode. All we're gonna do, slice the ends off because you don't wanna eat those, and then you wanna cut these to about, you got the 2 lines on your finger, maybe measure out to like the second one, and chop these into little bits like this, and just do that up and down the onion. They don't have to be perfect, they don't have to be super consistent, but relatively the same, just for style points more than anything else. And just slice that, and we'll maybe give these a chop in half, like so. First ingredient, done and dusted off of Cut Cam. We're gonna throw this into our mixing bowl, put it on Cut Cam right there, boom. Next thing we're gonna do, we've got 34 grams of cooked, these are air fried Oriental yams. I air fried these last night because I made this last night for my meal 5. I've actually eaten this the last 3 days in a row as my 5th meal because I like it so much. It's easy to make. It covers all my nutrients that I want out of my 5th meal, out of any meal that I have throughout the day. I'm actually gonna eat part of this as my 2nd meal today on recording day. And you might say 34 grams of yam, why is it? That seems like a weird number. From the math that I did, from 60 grams of raw weight of Oriental yam is what I wanted. The yam that I had was like 380 something. So rather than cutting it and trying to store it overnight in water, I just cooked the whole thing. I did out a big long math equation that I'm not gonna bore you with. And that also breaks one of my key components of being on TV or being on video is never do math on air. Tim, my cameraman, knows that from doing games for the NFHS network. Don't try to do math. You usually are wrong and you look stupid. So I'm not going to do the math here, but this is technically or close to 60 grams raw weight Oriental yam. cook down to like 34 grams. That's the thing with potato. It usually cooks down and loses some of its weight as you cook it. So do the math out, try to get 60 grams raw weight, or don't. You don't have to put potatoes in here at all. You can put less, you can put more. It's totally up to you. Now, star of the show, kimchi, fermented cabbage. Smells great. If you love funky, umami, spicy, fizzy, crunchy goodness, kimchi it's going to be for you. And this is something that you can eat it just as is. You could start picking at this with some chopsticks or a fork. If you go to a Korean restaurant, usually they'll give you a little side of it as part of the banchan, which is like an appetizer platter that they bring you out. You order your food, they bring you out a bunch of different little little appetizer things like kimchi and braised potatoes or broccoli with pepper sauce or fish cakes, which are great as well. And that's one of my favorite parts actually of going out to get Korean is the little banchan platter that they bring out before your appetizers and your entrees, because sometimes it changes from trip to trip to the same restaurant. So you get a bunch of different little things. It's great. They've got like some braised cucumber type stuff as well. So what we're gonna do with this is already chopped up pretty good. So just for the sake of not pouring this out, because there's some kimchi brine in there at the bottom, I'm just gonna add this into the mixing bowl with that kimchi brine. You want that brine as well. And when I say kimchi brine, you've got this jar here and you've got the kimchi, and then there's like some water, which is just the natural juices of the cabbage and the other vegetables in here that it just lets off as it ferments, as it breaks down. This stuff, again, it's awesome. It's fermented so it lasts for a long time, and the longer that you keep it, the more and more it ferments, the more sour it gets, the more flavor it gets, the deeper the flavor gets. And it's also a great probiotic, which is good for your gut overall. So we'll get into that a little more later. And then the last thing we're gonna do before we throw in our dry ingredient and our water is we're just gonna slice up some shrimp. Again, you don't have to add this, but I like to do it for some extra protein. You get a little bit of protein from either your all-purpose flour or your Korean pancake mix, but I want a little more. I'm shooting for about 40 grams a meal. So we're just gonna add, I think this is like 7 ounces-ish. And these are, you can see they're different types of shrimp because I raided my freezer before I came here, and I had some of these little mini ones that I had bought in yesterday. I had some of these bigger ones from a couple days ago. There's always shrimp in my freezer, different sizes, different types, because I usually forget that I have some in there, and I go to the store and I buy another bag that I don't need. I'm sure we all kind of do the same thing. And with this, all you want to do is just really simply chop this up into like bite-sized pieces, because you don't want, big chunks of this in the pancake. You want it to kind of line up with the size of everything else. So we're just going to chop this up, work your way through this pile, and we're going to kind of fast forward through this, and we'll come back and we'll add the other ingredients to our pancake batter. And actually, before I go to chopping these small ones, these big ones, if you get, these are uncooked, and these are they kind of cleaned out, obviously, the internal or like the gut part of this. What I like to do with these is kind of go down that back section and slice these in half, like so. Hold on. Boom. Then you kind of get like two thin halves, spread them apart, and then just chop them like that. Again, into like bite-sized pieces. You don't have to be crazy consistent. And again, these are cooked. The pink ones are obviously cooked already. You just dethaw them, and you can, I like to heat them up a little bit in some lukewarm water, boiling water, something like that. But you could totally just go in straight with those after chopping. These will cook while the pancake is cooking. So don't worry that you're using raw shrimp. So if you get pre-cooked, frozen pre-cooked ones that you just have to unshell, save those shells for stock. Don't go tossing those away. I say that I threw out my shells today because I can't leave those in work because it would probably stink up the joint, and I don't want to do that. So, but keep those shells, make a stock with it. We're gonna get to chopping, and then we'll come back with the rest of the batter. All right, so we are just about chopped up with our little shrimp. Get the extra smalls to make it easy on you. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all this shrimp and we're gonna put it in our mixing bowl. And our camera, while we were chopping, my cameraman Tim was saying, you're gonna try to cram all of that into one pancake. I am gonna try. I did it last night. It worked at home. During the cooking process, I was nervous, to say the least, but it ended up working out. So we've got our kimchi in here, we've got green onion, we've got potato, and we've got shrimp. We're gonna add 60 grams of, for me today, I'm using buchimgaru, which is pre-made Korean pancake mix. Again, the bougie option,
Bad and bougie.
the fancy option. I was at the Korean market, I couldn't help myself, I had to grab it. You can use all-purpose flour. 60 grams is equivalent to half of a cup, so use half of a cup of all-purpose flour if that's what you're gonna do. You can even add a little potato starch or corn starch if you want as well. So that goes in, simple. And again, the difference between this and all-purpose flour is this is, I think, wheat flour, and then it has some seasoning in there as well. So like some onion powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper. If you want to throw that into your all-purpose flour, go right ahead. Again, that if you're going the all-purpose flour route, you can get all these ingredients at either Market Basket or Walmart or Stop and Shop or whatever. So half a cup of flour, half a cup of water. This is going to be a thin batter. And you might be a little shocked at how thin it is as you're going, but don't worry, it's gonna work. And then the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna try to just get a little more of that kimchi brine, just for, I mean, this brine is packed with flavor. So we wanna get as much of that nice kimchi flavor in there as we can. I was going for like 2 tablespoons. Might have been just short, might have been just over, but 2 tablespoon-ish of kimchi brine. I have a jar at home that's like 50% kimchi brine right now because I had a big 90 ounce thing of full heads of kimchi that I bought at H Mart a couple months ago. I made that this weekend and that was so sour because it had been fermenting for so long. It was awesome. I'm due for another trip up to H Mart to go pick up another big jug of that. I'm also gonna head up there to get some cabbage myself because one of my holiday projects away from work is I'm going to try to ferment my own kimchi. And there's recipes online. This recipe is actually based off of the recipe posted by Mongchi, who's one of my favorite Korean cooks out there. Her videos are hilarious, very funny, and she's a great cook. Simple, easy to follow too, so check her out as well. This is where I got this recipe from. She uses all-purpose flour, so don't think, like I said, you have to use the special Korean pancake mix. You don't have to at all. So just mix this up, and again, this is on the thin side. You'll see it's thin, it's loose. You've got the kimchi in there, you've got the shrimp and all the other ingredients going on. So just give this, just work it around a little bit, and you just want the flour to kind of dissolve and disappear into the water and into the kimchi brine. This thing, again, I've said this on every episode, I wish you could smell this bowl right now because it's pungent, obviously from the fermented kimchi, but it smells great. And if you like that fermented, funky, deep umami flavor, kimchi should totally go into your daily diet. And again, like I said, it's a probiotic, which is good for gut health, which I think is underrated in a lot of people. I think a lot of people overlook their gut health, creating a good, healthy gut biome. It'll make a huge difference to how you feel throughout the day in terms of your GI tract and things of that nature. If you're kind of balance that out with getting the right greens, getting your prebiotics, getting probiotics. I drink a greens powder in the morning, and I also try to get in things like kimchi and gochujang, which is another big Korean ingredient, that are fermented because that kind of helps out that gut biome. And we'll go into that a little more in a little bit because this is like pretty much nice and mixed up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to heat up our skillet. And I have, in theory, a non-stick pan. And I say in theory because this is from my house and it is weathered and it's battered and it is used up and we obviously didn't clean it properly and we use metal spatulas and stuff on it. So the non-stick is a little bit of a risk, but we're gonna go on a journey today to find out if this still works. Hopefully it does. So we're just gonna get this thing heated up. Also, hopefully this thing doesn't topple off of our griddle. Actually, I'm gonna spin the handle like this. That should help it not fall off potentially. And we're just gonna let this get warm. before we throw on our pancake. Again, we're gonna hit it with some extra virgin olive oil spray. Talking is hard. We're gonna hit it with a pretty good layer. I'm gonna use more than I would use at home with my good non-stick pan that I didn't want to bring in today because other people are going to use it at our house throughout the day. So I didn't want to be that guy who took it when someone was going to use it. So I went with one of our older pans. But if you're using a really good non-stick pan, you don't have to put a ton of oil. Just let it sit. It'll naturally release off of there, shake it around. And then I'll show you my lid flipping technique as well. We're going to let this heat up. I don't have anything else to really say until this is heated up. But again, you can see how simple it is, not a ton of ingredients, 5-6 ingredients. Yesterday, we had some leftover broccoli. It was sitting on the stove when I got home from the gym. I said I'll chop that up and throw it in there as well. So you can use old vegetables. You could see I raided my freezer for extra shrimp that had been in there for a week or whatever. And it's one of those things, sometimes you throw meats or shrimp in the freezer and you never get to it again. This is a good way to take it out, de-thaw it, use it. My frozen fish de-thawing technique, what I like to do, I take it out, I fill up a container with water, I leave it in. You can either leave it out on the counter or you can leave it in the refrigerator. If it's a thin fillet, it'll de-thaw in like an hour. Shrimp will de-thaw in like 45 minutes or something like that. A lot of the packages say to use running water over top of it, but I don't like to waste the water, so I throw it into that. Again, you want to use cold water, don't use lukewarm or warm water. Cold water, put the shrimp in there, put your fish fillet in there, throw it in the fridge, let it sit for like an hour, it'll de-thaw, and then you're good to go. And I like doing that because I don't like de-thawing food because I think it takes too long most of the time. Like frozen chicken breast drives me crazy because it takes forever to de-thaw. With the frozen fish, you can just kind of do it in like 45 minutes to an hour and it's ready to go later that night. So you can have stuff like tilapia and cod fillet and frozen shrimp. So that's my shrimp thawing technique. Okay, this pan is starting to get pretty warm. I have this on maximum heat. Again, I've only used this stovetop burner or this home burner like 2 or 3 times, so not great with the heat controls on here. But we're gonna go full blast. This is on 5 out of 5, and we're gonna hit this with a little bit of cooking spray and a little bit more than I would use at home, just to try to create that non-stick surface. Again, we're hoping, and I'm gonna kick this up again, one more bit to maximum. And then all you do, take your batter, which is thick, and pour it into the center. Okay, that's a good sound. That's a good sound. Hopefully you can hear that. That's a good sound. And then go in there and just flatten this out into a pancake shape. Get right in there. And this is a big one. You could make little silver dollar ones if you wanted to. You don't have to use the whole pan if you don't want to. I know I'll bring up H Mart again, which is one of my favorite places to go in the world, up in Burlington. It is awesome. They have a great pre-cooked section of Korean food in one of the corners of the store. And they have little silver dollar kimchi pancakes. Pre-cooked, all you have to do is heat them up. What I like to do, and this is a good leftover kimchi pancake technique as well, if you go to a restaurant, you order a kimchi pancake, you don't finish the whole thing, bring it home. If you have an air fryer, this is an air fryer specific thing. So if you don't have an air fryer, go get one. It's 2020, they're like 25, 30 bucks for a small one. They are 10 times better, in my opinion, than an oven. They're great. So what you do, you throw those little silver dollars or your leftover slices of kimchi pancake into the air fryer, 400 degrees for like, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes, play it by ear, look at it. They crisp up like hash browns on the outside, and then they have that nice creamy middle with the crunchy cabbage, fermented cabbage in there. Thumbs up, man. So good. So that's my leftover kimchi pancake technique. If you have leftover from when you go out to the restaurant. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to tell you during this episode. My go-to Korean restaurant order. This is good for 2 to 3 people, maybe 4 if you guys are small eaters. Because I know maybe some of you guys are watching this and going, all right, I want to try Korean food. He's mentioned it a few times. I don't know where to start. This is where you start. 2 appetizers. Kimchi pancake, obviously. You can get it with seafood. You can get it without seafood. just be careful. If you get it with seafood at most places, it's going to have squid and octopus as well as shrimp and stuff. So just be careful. Be ready for that if you go that way. I usually just go with the kimchi scallion pancake, which is similar to this without the shrimp and the potato. Really solid. Then you also want spicy rice cake. Tteokbokki. It might be spelled a bunch of different ways because translating from Hangul to American characters, it can go a little bit crazy, but you want the spicy rice cake. So 2 appetizers, kimchi pancake, spicy rice cake. 2 entrees, dolsot bibimbap, stone pot bibimbap. It is this awesome earthenware hot bowl of rice and veggies with a little bit of beef and an over easy egg. They bring it out to your table. It looks beautiful. And what you do is you crack into the egg yolk, you mix up the egg and the veggies and the rice. And because the stoneware is hot, it crisps up the rice. It slowly cooks the egg as it coats all the rice. Dolsot bibimbap, gotta go get it. That's your first entree. And then your last order, your other entree, is either going to be chicken bulgogi or just regular bulgogi. Bulgogi is like thin beef. It's like a sweet, savory marinade on there, really good. Chicken bulgogi, same marinade, except they add usually a hot pepper sauce. So 4 items. You're also gonna get panchan, especially if you go up to Westboro, to the Westboro Korean restaurant. Not the most creative name in the world, but they kick out really good, authentic Korean food. I absolutely love going there. It's the same 2 waitresses too, and they're awesome. Shout out to them, I'm a big fan. But kimchi pancake, spicy rice cakes, dolsot bibimbap, stone pot bibimbap, or bulgogi of your choice. You can also get the short rib bulgogi if you want. So this thing, you can hear it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. You can see it. It's crisping, it's bubbling up. Tim, behind the camera, will tell you it smells really, really, really good. And all you're gonna do is you're just gonna let this continue to cook like you would a pancake. It's not gonna bubble up, so you just have to kind of play it by air on when you wanna flip. And what I like to do is kind of work the edges a little bit just to make sure the edges are kind of set. And you should eventually, if you have a good nonstick pan, again, this is not a good nonstick pan, but if you have a good nonstick pan, you should be able to shake it loose. That's when you know the bottom's done, and then we can go to the flip technique. So I'm gonna actually go in here with my plastic floppy spatula. I love these things because you can get into corners and crevices of pans. And we're just gonna kind of get this end. A lot of the batter has drifted over to this side, and the edges are okay. And we're gonna give this, okay, it's not fully set up yet, and we're just gonna let it sit. And this is all you're doing, is you're just letting this sit, letting it cook. It's gonna take longer to cook than you think. It's a lot slower process than a regular pancake. So just take your time. Don't go too soon or it's gonna break and fall apart. It won't ruin it, but you want a nice big whole pancake like they give you at the restaurants, which is great. But again, if you want to go smaller, if you want to go silver dollar size, you totally can. I probably should have, just because this isn't the best pan in the world, but you live and learn. And we're going live. This isn't technically live, but we're trying it live. I tested it last night. It worked out. I should have tested this pan last night, but I didn't want to go through the hassle. I wanted a good, easy kimchi pancake for dinner before I went to bed. So again, just let this go. And look at the color on this thing. And that's the great part of adding those green onions. You got the green, you got your oranges, you got the little red flakes of buchimgaru, which is in the kimchi. All sorts of videos on YouTube about how to make kimchi if you want to try and do it. Like I said, I'm going to give it a roll this December over the holiday season, try to make my own. It's usually traditionally made in the winter months. There's actually a kimchi shortage right now in Korea. And so kimchi prices have gone through the roof overseas. In America, it's still pretty cheap. I think this was like $3 or $4. I did use most of this can today. This was like a 14-ounce can. You're going to use 8 ounces. But again, if you do go to an Asian market, they'll sell them to you in gallon jugs. They have giant vats of this stuff. And again, because it's fermented, which is, again, one of the first ways in old societies that they used to keep food for long periods of time because they didn't have refrigeration, this stuff will last you for months on end. And like I said, it gets better as it sits. Let's bring our attention back to the hot plate as it is looking pretty good. Now, I'm not going to make the sauce that they usually give you at the restaurant. It's like a soy sauce based sauce. I think there's some garlic in there. I don't really usually use it. I usually just eat these straight up. But if you want to make those sauce, That sauce, you can look online. There's plenty of recipes on how to make that as a nice little dipping sauce to go along with this. We're getting there. It's not quite releasing from the bottom of the pan, which is what we're going for. And we have a lid that I'm gonna have Tim actually hand to me from off camera. And this is the easy, yeah, you can bring that over, Tim. This is the easy way to flip this thing. Because it's so big, what we're gonna try to do, keyword try, we'll see how it works out, is we're gonna slide this off onto here. We're gonna invert the pan. We're gonna flip it. The pancake's gonna fall off of this onto the pan. It's gonna be flipped. I could try to flip it in the air. If you miss and you mess up, you're not gonna have a kimchi pancake, or you're gonna have to start from the beginning, and I'm gonna have to clean up our studio, which nobody in the office is gonna like. So I'm gonna use the lid technique, which I use at home too, because I don't wanna waste ingredients. So let's hope, again, we're hoping that this thing releases, because I really do wanna show you the underside of this thing in one piece, because when it's flipped, it looks great. All right, let's give this another shake. It's still not quite ready. That's the thing. I don't know if it's not quite ready, or if it's not gonna fully release. So I'm gonna go in with my bigger spatula, and I'm going to not go in with my bigger spatula because I don't have a good angle of getting all the way underneath this. And I'm going to, this is a little bit of, I said this recipe is easy. Again, if you have a nonstick pan, it's super easy. If you do not, it is a challenge. Just kidding, but it kind of is. Yes, all right, after some work, that was literally me being very excited. We've got this thing loose. Again, if you're using a good nonstick pan, that'll happen way sooner and be way easier. And you should do this. I'm just gonna do this for a second just to calm down. But look at that, she's loose, okay? Then pan, lid, not the pan, the lid. Slide, like so. Invert, like so, and then you have to be with conviction. With conviction. Boom. Little overcooked because I couldn't get it to release from the pan, but we did it. And it's in one big piece. I'm excited. I didn't think this was, I'm not gonna lie, while we were trying to get it off of the pan, there was a big part of me that did not think it was gonna come off and it wasn't gonna work in one piece. I'm so glad that it did. It smells fantastic. You can smell the sweet potato. That sweet potato, the natural sugars in there caramelizing, giving off a great aroma. The kimchi smelling great. We've got the aromatics of the green onion. We've got this really tasty Korean pancake batter. Once you flip it, let the other side go for a few minutes here or there. Same thing, after about a minute or so, you should be able to shake it like I was, and it'll slide around the pan, and that's when you know that this thing is done. It's gonna be relatively crunchy on the outside and crispy. The middle's gonna be a little gooey, so the texture is a little different than kind of a regular pancake. But like I said, if you wanna really crisp this up, if you have a big enough air fryer, like the Vortex one that we have at home, you could probably put this whole thing in the air fryer, crisp it up right now. I like to eat it right out of the pan, and then the leftovers I'll throw in the air fryer. Again, we're staying on maximum heat, and we're just gonna let this other side cook through. And again, slightly overcooked, but in one piece, and that's all that matters. And then what we can do, this is another thing when you're serving, oh, I overcooked one side. Hopefully the second side doesn't stick, and we can release it. The second side will look good, flip it over, hide that, cut into the good looking side, and you nailed it. That's, that's cooking 101 right there. Hide your flaws when you can. That's actually life advice right there. Hide your flaws when you can. So again, our shrimp is going to be totally cooked through at this point, just cooking here on the stove. I'm going to give this a little bit of a shake just to see how this side's doing. Not ready yet. Now the second side is probably actually going to be even harder because at this point, all the non-cooked spray that we used on there is gone. So we'll see if this comes out. It's going to come out. Worst case scenario, we're just going to flip the whole pan, and what gets stuck on the underside of the pan gets stuck on the underside of the pan. That's another thing. You live and you learn and you try new things. But again, this is such an easy recipe, and I'm not going to blabber on any longer. I'm just going to let this thing cook. Yes, again, released. Nice. Okay, we're gonna turn this down to like 1, because at this point, she's good to go. And what I'm gonna do is clear off some space here so I can cook this thing, or cut this thing. It's early in the morning, and as you guys know, I'm not good at speaking out loud. All right, so just gonna clean this board off from where I was cutting from earlier. And what we're gonna do is we can kill the heat here, shake this thing around. And what I'm gonna do actually is the same style thing I did with the, never mind. I'm not gonna do that. What I'm gonna do is, Tim, you wanna lid me again? Thinking on the fly. Again, we're doing this, we tape this show, kind of, you know what? I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Ha-ha! I told you, the second side, you can see right there, looks way better. And so present this side. And this is, talking about this recipe, this is something you can make in big batches. We'll get those potatoes on there as well. Just exponentially make the batter bigger. Rather than using half a cup, use a cup to make 2, or a cup and a half to make 3. Or like I was doing on Saturday, is I made 1, was cooking, while the first one was cooking, I made a second batch of batter. This one, the first one was done, threw the next batter on. I ended up making 3 of these total in about, I don't know, 45 minutes or so. 2 of them for the house, 1 whole one for me. Cook always gets a little more. That's the way that I roll. All right, so serving. This thing's a little oblong right now, but that's fine. All we're gonna do is we're going to cut this thing into, if you're eating this by yourself, I just cut it into 4ths. If you're serving this for multiple people, cut it into 1/8, like a pizza. Get that shrimp off there. And they'll usually cut it for you, or it's pre-cut at the restaurants, and it's cut into 1/8. But again, you just watch this video, you really don't need to go to the restaurant to try this. You can make this at your house. But if you want to go out and you want to try what it really tastes like from somebody who knows more than what they're doing than me and doesn't struggle with flipping them and has a good nonstick pan, then you can go to the restaurant and try this. So chop this in to 8 pieces. And it might be a little hard to cook, because again, it's kind of doughy and gooey, and again, it's a runny, high hydration batter, so it's going to be on the runny side. So just get in there and cut it as best you can. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a kimchi pancake. Savory, kimchi forward, fermented flavor. I don't know where to put my knife. I'm just going to put it right there. But again, kimchi pancake, savory, little spicy, fermented, umami, crunchy, great batter. Easy to make if you have a good pan. Just kidding. It's still easy to make. Just the flip can be difficult. Flipping things on this show have been difficult. We've had our trouble with stickage, but as you can see, the waffle is cooked. It's up here. Here we go. Kimchi pancake. Look at the size of this thing. And as I like to do on the show, look at the size of this thing. This whole pancake, about 515 calories, not counting the calories from the cooking spray. We used a fair amount. I don't know, maybe we added 30, 40, 50 more calories to it, but all of the ingredients in the pancake without the cooking spray, like 515 calories, like 80 plus grams of carbohydrates, like 2 grams of fat, and 40 grams of protein. This is a great meal. Like I said, this is my go-to meal 5 right now, my big dinner, the one that I like to cook at home by myself. You should make it yourself. You should go pick up some kimchi. You should use kimchi. You should eat it by itself. You should make a pancake. You can make kimchi fried rice. You can make a stew or soup and throw kimchi in there for some extra flavor. This stuff is awesome. You should be eating it. I'm gonna be eating this in about 2 seconds. Hope you enjoyed it. Kimchijeon, Kimchi Pancake Nutritious, delicious. See you next time.